January 22nd, 1943, 9:17 a.m., west of Point Cruz, Guadalcanal. The air hung thick with the rot of jungle decay and cordite. Second Lieutenant John George, 27 years old, Illinois state rifle champion with 0 confirmed kills, pressed his body into the crumbling sandbags of a captured Japanese bunker. The sun filtered through the coconut palms in jagged shafts, turning the grove into a deadly cathedral of green and shadow. You can almost feel the sweat tracing lines down his neck, the weight of the humid air pressing on his chest like an invisible hand. His heart pounded steady, not from fear, but from the focused calm of a man who had spent years squeezing triggers on ranges back home. In his hands was no standard-issue M1 Garand, no rugged, battle-proven Springfield. Instead, he cradled a sleek, civilian Winchester Model 70 bolt-action, chambered in .30-06, topped with a Lyman Alaskan 2.5 power scope on Griffin and Howe mounts. A mail-order sweetheart, his fellow officers had called it. A toy, a sporting rifle for deer in the Illinois woods, not for the empire of the rising sun. Captain Morris had ordered him point-blank to leave it in the tent and carry a real weapon. The platoon leaders laughed when the wooden crate arrived weeks earlier, marked fragile. They mocked the man who had saved 2 years of National Guard pay to buy precision in a war that demanded volume of fire. Semi-auto was king, they said, 8 rounds slamming out fast. Who needed a slow bolt gun with glass on top in the close quarters hell of the Pacific? But now, 14 Americans from the 132nd Infantry Regiment lay dead in 72 hours. Japanese snipers, ghosts in the banyans, had turned the coastal groves into a killing field. They climbed before dawn, wedged into forks 80, 90 feet up in trees with trunks 8 feet thick, and waited with scoped Arisaka Type 98s. 1 shot, 1 kill, then silence. George glassed the tree line slowly, left to right, filtering the endless cacophony of insects and distant artillery. A branch shifted. No wind, just a deliberate human movement 240 yards away. High in a banyan, a dark shape in a fork of branches, facing east toward an American supply trail. He adjusted 2 clicks for wind. The Winchester's trigger broke clean at 3.5 pounds, glass smooth, tuned on Camp Perry ranges. He exhaled half a breath. Crack. The rifle kicked into his shoulder. Far away, the Japanese sniper jerked violently and plummeted through the branches, crashing 90 feet to the jungle floor. George worked the bolt, chambering another round, eyes never leaving the scope. 1 down. But snipers worked in pairs. Where was the spotter? The mockery of that mail-order rifle felt very far away. Type continued to generate the next section. Section 2. First Blood. The echo of the shot still rolled through the groves as George scanned the canopy. The Lyman Alaskan wasn't powerful, but in expert hands, it revealed what the naked eye missed: subtle shifts in shadow, the glint of metal, the outline of a man who thought himself invisible. Minutes ticked by in the sweltering heat. Then movement again. 60 yards north, a second figure descending a trunk, retreating after hearing his partner's death. George led the target smoothly, accounting for the drop, and squeezed. The man tumbled backward, his Arisaka clattering ahead of him through the leaves. 2 shots, 2 kills. By noon, he had 5. Word raced back through the battalion like wildfire. Men who had sneered at the toy now whispered in awe. The lieutenant with the fancy Illinois rifle was hunting the hunters, but George refused spectators. Extra bodies meant extra eyes on his position, extra risk. He ate sparingly from his rations, sipped warm water from his canteen, and kept glassing. The Japanese adapted. A bullet slammed into the sandbags inches from his head, spraying dirt across his face. He rolled left, heart racing, and waited. Shoot and move was their doctrine too, but the dense jungle limited options.
At 11:38, he spotted the shooter repositioned in the same cluster of banyans, a fatal mistake. The third fell silently. The mail-order rifle, with its tighter groups at range and match-grade accuracy, was proving itself against men trained in the art of ambush. The garons of his comrades barked in volume, but this bolt action delivered death with surgical finality. As the sun climbed higher, the groves grew quieter. The predators were becoming the prey. But 11 Japanese snipers remained active in the sector, and they now knew a new devil stalked them, one with a civilian scope and unshakable patience. What would the afternoon bring?
The afternoon heat pressed down like a wet blanket as Lieutenant John George shifted slightly in the bunker ruins, his uniform soaked through. The Winchester rested steady on a sandbag parapet, its barrel still warm from the morning's work. 5 confirmed kills. The bodies of his targets lay crumpled at the bases of their banyans, silent proof that precision trumped volume in this green hell. But the Japanese were professionals. Word traveled through their hidden positions faster than any radio. By early afternoon, the remaining snipers knew. An American counter-sniper with exceptional eyes and a quiet rifle was systematically dismantling their web. They changed tactics. No more static purchase, probes, feints, shots designed to draw him out. A bullet cracked overhead, snapping leaves and whining off into the jungle. George didn't flinch. He waited, counting heartbeats, letting the enemy reveal themselves. Another shot slammed into the bunker wall, closer this time, dirt exploding near his elbow. Southwest again, different elevation. He glassed methodically, the 2.5 power scope painting the world in sharp but narrow detail. There, faint movement in the mid-branches of a massive tree, perhaps 280 yards out. A spotter signaling, or the shooter repositioning for a killing shot. George adjusted his hold, accounting for the thicker humidity distorting the air. The trigger broke clean once more. The figure slumped. 6. As the light began to shift toward dusk, fatigue clawed at him. His shoulders burned from hours of tension. Mosquitoes swarmed, drawn to sweat and exposed skin. Malaria was as deadly an enemy as any sniper, but he pushed it aside. This wasn't sport anymore. This was vengeance for the 14 American boys cut down while filling canteens or walking trails, for the families back home who would never understand why their sons never came back from a Pacific island. Nightfall forced him to withdraw under covering fire from a patrol. He cleaned the Winchester by lantern light in his tent, wiping away the day's grime, checking the scope mounts for any shift. Captain Morris said nothing about the toy that evening. The laughter had died with the Japanese snipers. But 6 wasn't 11. The groves still hid ghosts with scoped Arasakas, and they would be waiting at first light, angrier and cunning. Would the mail-order rifle hold its edge when the enemy came looking for the man behind the scope?
Dawn on the second day broke with a blood-red sky over Point Cruz. Lieutenant John George was already in position before the mist lifted, belly down in a fresh scrape forward of the previous bunker. The Winchester felt like an extension of his body now, its balance perfect, the bolt silky from constant use. The mockery from weeks ago echoed faintly in his mind, but the 6 bodies cooling in the jungle spoke louder. The Japanese had not been idle. Overnight, they repositioned. Intelligence from patrols suggested at least 5 more active snipers in the immediate groves. Perhaps reinforcements slipped in under darkness. They knew the American hunters' approximate range and preferred firing lanes. This time, they would hunt him. George started glassing in extreme patience, quartering the canopy inch by inch. The jungle symphony swelled. Birds, insects, the rustle of leaves in the faint breeze. Then a tell, a branch swaying against the wind pattern, 220 yards distant. He centered the crosshairs on the dark silhouette tucked behind foliage. Breath out, trigger press. The Winchester cracked, and another sniper tumbled earthward. 7. But this time, return fire came immediately. 3 shots in rapid succession from different trees, stitching the ground around his position. One round punched through the sandbag, inches from his rifle hand, sending a spray of grit into his eyes. He rolled, blinking furiously, heart hammering. They're triangulating me. You can almost taste the copper fear mixed with adrenaline, the raw awareness that one miscalculation meant a bullet tearing through your skull. George low-crawled to a secondary position 30 yards away, dragging his rifle like a precious lifeline. From the new angle, he picked out the muzzle flash signature of the closest threat, 80 feet up, partially screened. He fired. 8. Word filtered back to the battalion CP. Men gathered at the edge of the groves, peering through binoculars, murmuring. The lieutenant with the civilian rifle was turning the tide single-handed. Platoon leaders who had once scoffed now requested permission to observe and learn. George still refused most of them. A crowd drew fire like flies to carrion. By midday, the heat became a physical enemy. Dehydration clawed at his throat. His hands, though steady, ached from repeated bolt manipulations. Yet the rifle never faltered. Its tighter grouping at combat ranges gave him the edge the mass-produced Garans could not match in this duel of shadows. Another sniper, bolder or desperate, tried a long oblique shot. George traced the sound and the disturbed foliage, leading the target as the man shifted position. 9. As the sun dipped, a chilling realization set in. The enemy snipers were sacrificing themselves to learn his habits. They were buying time, drawing his fire, hoping to exhaust him or force a mistake. One more confirmed kill before dark brought the tally to 10, but the 11th, the craftiest, perhaps their leader, remained elusive, hidden deeper in the interlocking canopy. George withdrew under fire once more, a fresh bullet graze across his helmet rim. That night, as he cleaned the Winchester by dim light, he knew the final duel would come at first light. The mail-order rifle had silenced the laughter. Now it had to deliver the last decisive blow before the groves claimed him instead.
The third morning on Guadalcanal's killing groves found Lieutenant John George moving before the stars fully faded. Exhaustion etched deep lines into his young face, but his eyes burned with quiet resolve. 10 Japanese snipers lay dead across the Point Cruz sector. One remained, the phantom who had eluded him, the one whose shots had come closest to ending the duel in the enemy's favor. The battalion had lost no more men from sniper fire since he began. The mail-order Winchester had shifted the momentum of an entire sector. He chose a new hide, a shallow depression reinforced with fallen logs and camouflage netting scavenged from supply crates. The rifle, now battle-worn but meticulously maintained, rested on its bipod-like sandbag rest. Scope lenses wiped crystal clear, ammunition carefully selected for consistency. This was no longer just a hunt. It was a personal reckoning. Hours crawled by. The jungle seemed to hold its breath with him. Then, at mid-morning, the trap revealed itself. A deliberate rustle, too obvious, a decoy movement designed to draw his eye and his shot. George ignored it, continuing his slow, methodical glassing. Patience, the same virtue that won him the Illinois State Championship years earlier, was his greatest weapon. There, high in a towering banyan, nearly 300 yards away, a faint reflection, not sunlight on leaves, but the subtle glint of a scope lens. The 11th sniper had climbed higher than the others, using the thick trunk and multiple branch layers for cover. He was waiting for George to commit to the decoy, a master playing against another master. The distance pushed the Lyman Alaskan to its limits. Wind whispered through the palms, requiring precise doping. George's breathing slowed to almost nothing. The trigger felt like an old friend. He estimated the hold, exhaled, and fired. The crack split the morning. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the distant figure convulsed, slipped and fell in a long, twisting arc through the branches, crashing into the undergrowth below. 11. Silence descended over the groves like a benediction. No return fire, no movement in the canopy. The reign of the Japanese sniper teams in that sector was broken. Word spread like lightning through the 132nd Infantry.
Men who had once laughed at the mail-order sweetheart now sought George out, shaking his hand, slapping his back, asking to examine the rifle that had done the impossible. Captain Morris approached quietly, offering a nod of respect that carried more weight than any medal. The civilian bolt-action had outperformed doctrine, proving that in the right hands, precision and marksmanship could rewrite tactics in the Pacific theater. Over the following days, the principles George demonstrated, careful observation, superior glass, and calm execution under fire, began influencing other units. His success saved countless American lives in the brutal campaigns that followed. The Winchester Model 70, purchased with saved pay and shipped across an ocean, had earned its place in history not as a toy, but as a legend. John George survived Guadalcanal and went on to further service, including with Merrill's Marauders, carrying the lessons of those 4 days with him. He later chronicled his experiences in Shots Fired in Anger, a testament to the rifleman who turned the tide one careful shot at a time. The groves of Point Cruz grew quiet. The mockery had ended. Precision had won.